Good evening and welcome to Raconteurs News. And Tuesdays come round quick as it always does. Been rather interesting few days, hasn't it, Jason? You noticed a few things happening that are slightly strange, like we've got even buildings that are getting a sexual identity now.
That's right, yeah. I mean, we had this shooting in a gay nightclub. Now, I don't know whether now you have to sort of sexualise your properties and say whether it's gay or straight or it's transgender. But apparently there was the circus continues. It just seems to be that every week. But at least with this one, they've killed two birds with one stone because he's not only a terrorist and was on the phone to the 911 emergency services while they were doing it. He was also, he cornered some people in the bathroom, and one of them said that while he was on the phone, he asked if there were any black folks there, and then said he didn't have any problem with black people, and he just, it was because America was bombing his country. It just amazes me that when a politician's accused of something, it's always, we need to do is we need to take stock. There needs to be a full investigation, and then months and years later they come out and say, "Oh no, they did nothing wrong." Yet as soon as there's a shooting like this, very quickly within hours, who's done it, why they've done it. You've even got witness testimony as to what's gone on in there, and it just seems that people are more and more accepting of this ridiculous reality that seems to be playing itself out in front of us. But like I say, it's a carousel, and I'm glad that I'm not one of those people that's riding that carousel. I'm just off the carousel observing and just, laughing at people that are still on it.
Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody the other night, and first question they asked me was, after "Hi Andy," was, "When's the false flag going to be then?" So there's quite a few people expecting one over here, and wouldn't surprise me at all. But anyway, we've got a fantastic guest lined up tonight, and she's been on once before, way back in the days of Enemy Within. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome to Raconteurs News, welcome back to our radio station, Lisa Tanner. Good evening, Lisa.
Evening, Lisa.
Guys, I hope you're both well.
We're very well. What about you?
Yes, I'm extremely well, thank you. I've been doing a bit of scanning. Been earning my nickname, Tanner the Scanner.
Oh, excellent. So
you're not going to make anybody's head explode, are you?
No, I'm going to try not to. I'm going to try and keep it basic. I've got sort of lined up tonight, what I think to talk about is securitisation in general. Mm-hmm. So I think where we're going to start is basically how each country that has a central bank has been corporatised, so to speak, and how we basically internationally trade with one another and are covered by an international trading law, which is very, very applicable to us all. So
how's about first of all, you start off, tell us about your journey. Who are you, and how did you come to be doing what you're doing now?
Okay, yeah. Well, it was a few years ago now. I mean, I come from a company background. My history is recruitment. So I've had a couple of recruitment companies, and basically I had my little boy and never went back, and sort of fell into times that I never thought I'd find myself in, and ended up having to go to a food bank, and had various debt collectors chasing me for various things and that, and just stumbled across some information really, and managed to sort of write the debts off and such things, and just started looking deeper, and just that was sort of where my journey started. But what I found interesting and understood more so than anything else was the sort of financial legislation and stuff like that. I understand the makeup of companies and how they work and why companies take certain actions, mainly tax avoidance. So basically I found that some very interesting information that basically as people, as persons, we are collateralized. We are made that using the birth certificate. So that sort of got me thinking that there must be somebody running this outfit as a corporate level, basically.
So can you explain to us what you mean by we're capitalised? What we're corporate? Do you mean we're corporatised? We're turned into a company?
It makes us into a corporation, basically. It's that all caps name thing, isn't it? It's what they do. I don't know how it was ever founded and stuff like that. I don't claim to know, but basically, when we come into society, we're worth a certain amount to the financial system. And so what they do is they create the birth certificate, which is actually on Bank of England paper, if you look like the Azure watermark and stuff like that. And basically what they do is they'll get a whole bunch of birth certificates. So I don't know, say 500 people's birth certificates, and they'll create a security pool with them. So say each birth certificate's worth £1 million. They'll create a pool using lots of those, and then the security pool in itself becomes worth 9 times the value of that, because it moves into fractional reserve banking. So £100,000 is worth £900,000, because £800,000 of it is debt-based securities. So basically, our birth certificates are being traded on the stock exchange by various companies by us. I mean, you can look into yours. I do believe mine, my national insurance is owned by a company called DuPay Holdings based out in Shanghai. And I'm also owned by a computer agency. I can't remember who they were. So that got me looking into other things and how they must be trading these. And I then moved on and realised that they wasn't just trading birth certificates. They were trading countries, they were trading governments, they were trading anything that they can capitalise on, basically. If you can create a receivable, you can securitise. So I went over onto the sec.gov and interestingly found it, and anybody, if you go onto it, just sec.gov and put in on a company filing search, Her Majesty's Government, and that will pull you up a little file and give you a couple of little buttons to click on. I haven't got them in front of me now, but if you just go through those documents, that will give you an understanding, and it's all based around the CLAPS, so I do believe them forms in about 2007, 2008, and it's basically our government being told off for all this fractional reserve banking and this and that. But what's interesting is every country that trades on the stock exchange, it has a code. It's an allotted code. It's a SEC code. So ours is XO. So what you'll see is all the companies that are listed there fall into the SEC code XO. Now, XO is actually the square mile in London, which is the part that's offshore. It's, you know, the United Kingdom's owned by London. It's very strange. But so is the case in every country that there's a central bank, basically. So obviously then I've started with meeting lots of people that are having mortgage problems and that. So I started thinking, well, that's a receivable. Let's look into mortgage securitisation. So now we've got it at a level where we can actually find the titles of each properties that are sitting in these pools of securities. And if you don't find the titles in the securities, you'll find them in the trust deed. Now, the trust deed, interestingly, is registered at company's house because it's a receivable. It's commerce, you know. So when we go to Land Registry and it tells you the proprietor and who holds the equitable title and stuff like that, it doesn't tell you this part, that there's another charge over your property, because it isn't registered at Land Registry. It's registered at company's house because it's put in this pool of securities. They've created a limited company which they use as a special purpose vehicle, and BOP, that's their platform to get their security out. Yeah, basically.
So can we just rewind a little bit? Sorry, there's so much detail. I just want to clarify a few things. So what you're saying is essentially when we're born, we become an asset, and that asset is on paper, and that asset has a value because of what we're going to bring to the party, into the system as we grow up.
The thing is, what I should have started with was the Gold Act. You had the Gold Amendment Act, it was in Great Britain, of 1931, and that was when they confiscated all the gold, and there was no gold back in the money anymore. So people became the backing for the money, our promise to pay back the sweat equity, which is why we shouldn't pay tax as well, because our sweat equity, we go to work for all week, and we get paid as equal offset for our labour. That's why there should be no tax involved. It's like equal offset kind of thing. And I've lost myself there, so take me back to the question you asked. I do apologise.
Yeah, we're just talking about how we become an asset when we're born, a corporation's created, and what you're saying is it goes from people right through, from corporations right through to countries. So actual countries are securitized and are given a value and traded on stock markets.
Absolutely. I mean, more interesting recently, what I found is with courts. The courts in the local area, what they're doing is the courts own the building, the councils and the courts, they own their buildings, but what they're doing is they're charging their self rent to make it into a receivable. Right. And then they're getting like a company that I found for our one down here, I won't mention any names, and basically they're using them as the special purpose vehicle to go and then securitise this rent and the receivables, but I would assume that all the fines and everything else are going through there as well as collateral.
Yeah, so everything is become corporations. Our courts, our judicial system, every aspect of our life, anything that they can squeeze some money out of, it's all become corporations, and there's nothing natural anymore. Can you tell me what happens to my birth certificate? What happens when I die? Does that have any effect, or is it just do we carry on being traded? Does that carry on being traded?
Get a death certificate then, and you're not a mister anymore, are you? So you're free. You're free to go to heaven. Okay, that's the solace you're going to get, and that's the truth. No, there's hope in there, guys. There's hope in there. I'm joking.
Yeah. So, but would my birth certificate would then not be not be traded anymore?
Well, interesting, because when you go, they're not going to pull it out of a pool that it's still sitting in when it's got to mature for 30 years. And I do believe they continue after you go, because I believe that they'll do it to the end of the 30-year cycle. I mean, I know that I've seen mortgages created in dead people's names. There's dead people, but their mortgage is still floating in a pool. So it's until it's matured in whatever pool it's in for however long. So once the last bond matures, then they can't use a birth certificate anymore, because you've got the death certificate and lost the title.
Oh wow! Well, we've got a couple of new members in the RN chat room tonight. We've got Mike GS and Rotty. Good evening. Welcome to Raconteurs News. And Rotty said that my asset value was $7,500 in 1959. It matured in 1999 at $74,500.
Correct. Yeah, they're every 30 years. Now, what happens is, what you don't realise is that's just one bond. When you go and investigate your bonds, what they've actually done is, for every month that they've been bought, that you've been alive, they've allotted the same amount of money. So they've made another denomination. So when he was born, and he's quite right, it would have been 76,000 whatever. What he's got is, for every month that he's been alive, that amount to add again. That's what people don't realise, because they've added denominations of 10,000 in there every month for every year that you've been alive.
Wow.
Which they've securitised as well. So think in nominal values again. In the shadow reserve banking world, it's 9 times that amount anyway. And it's not only your birth certificate in your name, everything that's been created in your name, every title, so everything your title's created, so to speak, and your asset that they're generating interest off, they skim it off monthly, quarterly, whatever the pool arrangement is, and they put it in their little pocket, which ultimately ends up in a nice little hedge fund over in Cayman.
So really, it is. Most of us are already aware it's a massive scam, but the size of the scam is huge, because
there's so many layers.
Yeah, they refloated the country on the backs of our sweat. Yeah, they're making money out of just a piece of paper with our name on it, or the all caps name on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let them keep the interest. Just give us our asset. Just give us our asset. I mean, I had some conversations some time back with the National Insurance Office and got them to send me a report of what I'd paid in the public. I think it was a call me and Chrissy Morris done some time ago. And interestingly, the guy says on the phone, when I say to him, well, I'm not interested in what I've actually paid in cash. I'm interested in the securities that have been raised against it. And I'm interested in the accounting surrounding it. And he said, we don't hold that information here. That's held at the Treasury.
Yeah, all roads lead to the Treasury, don't they?
Roads lead to Rome, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's a very true saying there. So, how long have you actually been digging into this particular aspect, Lisa?
Really heavily for probably about the last year and a half.
Mhm.
I became sort of UCC aware more recently. The titles brought me to the UCC because you hear so many people say it's not relevant in the UK. Anywhere there's finance and global trade, it's relevant. And remember, we're global trade, we're global common stock.
Yeah, and for anyone who's not aware, that's the Uniform Commercial Code, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
Which is the law that all countries do business with.
Exactly, absolutely.
And it applies on every country on the earth, as far as I'm aware, doesn't it?
Yeah. As much as the old courts don't like to admit it, it governs them all right. Anybody acting in commerce, it governs. And as they've all turned themselves into fictitious entities, it governs them.
But more importantly, they've turned us into fictitious entities as well.
Well, no, they've turned us into persons, legal entities. I'd rather be the fictitious entity. It sort of don't have a certain legal title. It's like the trust arrangement, isn't it? You want to be the beneficiary of the trust with no legal title. The trustees, they hold the legal title for the trust arrangement. That's why they get all the debt. And that's what they've made us. Of our arrangement, they've made us the trustees who are liable for all the debt. And of course, they're the beneficiaries. But all the time, they don't encroach on the asset. They're not breaking any laws.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had a conversation with a good friend about this some time back, and there are several people I know out there that are going down this lose the legal name route and trying to become beneficiaries of this trust. And my friend explained to me that you can't actually become the beneficiary, but what you can do is you can collapse the trust at any time.
What you do is you will stop them accessing the trust.
Uh-huh.
So you close the gates to the trust.
And is that easy to do?
I don't know.
In theory, should it be easy to do?
Yeah, when we truly understand who we are at the core, yeah, it's all around us. Well, I think what we've been made into is like we're fish swimming in water, and it's all around us. Yet we're still asking for the drink of water, but it's all around us. But we've been trained to still ask for it, you know.
Thirsty fish. That's what we are. We're all thirsty fish.
Yeah, we just need to slow down. We just need to slow down and realign.
And try and keep away from the vicious fishes.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of them out there, believe me. I've had my experiences that side too, don't get me wrong. It's been a hard trot, like I say. I never believed I'd end up in the situation I'm in, going to a food bank, debt collectors and stuff like that, but I did, and it's brought me to a wonderful place in my life, and I wouldn't have it any other way now, you know. Things happen for reasons, I believe, because what I've really sort of achieved out of this now is, I mean, I can't save anybody, but what I can do is protect people now, protect their assets, you know, and stuff like that. I mean, obviously, when certain steps have taken place, it's too late. It's illegal to asset protect kind of thing. But had we all been sort of, if we can make more people aware now that are in a good place, at least we can change that part. So when we're heading for this nice big collapse we're heading for the end of this year, beginning of next, at least more people are not going to lose more stuff if we can get them ready for it, you know. That's where I was sort of thinking.
Yeah, I mean that's a noble cause if you can help people protect their assets and stop these sharks getting their hands on them.
Yeah, 'cause it's going to get worse. We're heading for a big boom, aren't we? I mean, we're at the end of the 8-year bubble anyway, which is a normal sort of cycle, but we're also at the end of a big 70-year bankruptcy where they've come hard for the property and stuff. And you know, there's so many sitting ducks. I think of my own family members that have got full title over their property but have never actually registered and protected their equitable title with Land Registry and placed it into trust, so they're like sitting ducks waiting to be taken out by these people, you know. There's lots of them, like older people as well, you know.
Yeah, if we can put people in touch with you or put them in touch with the information where they can do this, then that's something we really ought to be looking towards doing. Is there one place online where you can go and find out a great deal about this, Lisa, or do you have to kind of root around and dig
What
yourself
do you
to
mean
find
about
it?
the asset protection using trust?
Yeah.
Well, if you look to sort of wealth management companies, they give away a wealth of information, and there's also a company called Step. But generally, no, it's information that you'd have to pay for, like through the roof kind of thing. But what we're sort of trying to get to now, and I don't want to do it myself, I'll give it to somebody else to do, is to put like a basic trust deed up, a private express trust that people can use. Give them the instruction of what to do with it, how to fill it out, and obviously a few simple instructions of if you've got equity in your mortgage, how you can remove that, all properly, legally, lawfully, however you want to put it, using the Law of Property Act, and you can actually pop that into trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got an asset again there that you could use to potentially create a platform if you wanted to issue some securities. 100 grand would be 900 grand. And that would pay someone's mortgage if they're having difficulty paying it. I know a guy that lost his house that had 100 grand equity in it. He went to the court and got it back thereafter. But had we known what we know now, he could have protected the title by removing the equity. It all gets registered at Land Registry and stuff. So you actually protect the title by registering the RX1 form. And it places a restriction by you using your equitable title, by you invoking your equitable title, so to speak.
Oh, wow. That sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a very new thing that I've learned. It's very new information that I've come across. But yeah, I mean, see, I've sort of been working with a few people, but nobody really that sort of moves in these circles kind of thing, you know. But I'm looking to just get it wrapped down in just some layman's terms, so these people have got half a fighting chance at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that there's still people out there that are trying new things, that are testing new things, and things that don't necessarily always work, but they're still out there testing them and pushing back against these corporations and these banks that just seem to be raping assets from not only from the land and the soil and you know our natural assets, but also from people. It's like they're sucking people's souls
They are.
with all the money that they just want to suck out of people.
See,
And yet the ones at the top, they get away and they don't have to pay anything.
oh, do you know, not only is it they don't have to pay anything, they don't need money. They're not like you and I. They don't use money. They don't own the clothes on their back, but they get full benefit of everything,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, the more money they've got, the less they have to pay out.
Well, listen, what they do, they don't use money. They create credit lines and they offset the credit lines.
Ah, right. So somebody told me a long, long time ago, if you're rich enough, paying tax is absolutely optional. That seems to be the way it is. Although I've seen several very good arguments to say that paying tax is voluntary, and it appears in all the codes in the UK and the US that it is a voluntary thing, and also that if you have any reason to believe that any of your money is going towards committing terrorist act, then you're breaking the law by paying tax.
Yeah, I've seen it all, and I've seen people try and use it in court as well. I don't know of any successes. Do you guys? Have you heard of any successes with that?
The only one that I'm aware of is the guy, I think his name was Tony Rook, and he went to court over TV licensing, and he used the Terrorism Act there.
Well, they are funding propaganda. I mean, they
Yeah,
are.
That's a bit of a red herring, because apparently he was found guilty, but he was given a conditional discharge and told to get a license. That's what the.
Oh, that's not a win, then, is it?
It's not a win. I think that was misreported in alternative media, and I think because he used didn't he use the fact that they knew about Building 7 falling. The BBC knew about Building 7 falling.
That's right.
And so the whole thing was round that, but in the end, I think he was found guilty and he was given a conditional discharge or an absolute discharge, but just told to get a license.
Yeah. Yeah, see, and that's what happens is, I think when I first come into this myself. We romanticise with the new information that we have, and I think, you know, like, I consider a win when you have lost something and you have fully got it back, or you haven't lost something and they're never going to come back for you for that. That to me is just clear, like, that's a win, you know. What's happening a lot of the time is it's just fending them off for so long.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to keep coming back and coming back and coming back, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, we've got 2 interesting comments there in the chat room. From Dr. Rock, we've got that Litmus successfully used no tax for war to excuse himself from road tax. And Keno points out that Dave Coverdale went to prison for putting his tax into an escrow account. So
Right, Dave Coverdale, that's where that was the one I think I see all that Terrorism Act stuff through. I'm not too sure about that. I mean, the councils, they operate as a trust.
mm-hmm.
And they basically, like I say, they've made us trustees of the trust arrangement when a council's meant to set up to benefit the people. So what they've got in place was once a beautiful system that worked for the people, but somebody went in there and infiltrated, got very greedy, and turned it around on us. So, I mean, I've looked a little bit about expression of trust. So that's when you go into a trust arrangement, and because you're the settler, you're the creator of the said trust and title, only you can go in and make the law of that trust. So you can re-enter the trust at any time, and there's nothing to stop you expressing the trust in writing. So you'd write a declaration of trust, which would appoint council members, the mayor, head of refuse and collection as trustees again, which is how it's rightfully meant to be. Mm-hmm. And then you sort the financial arrangement out using a special deposit order, and that swaps the financial arrangement from debtor to creditor. But again, it's something that I haven't seen work with my own eyes. I can understand how and why it works. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen it as yet, and I'm not trying to fearmonger or anything, but I'm a mum on my own with a little boy, so I tend not to attack the councils too hard because they're serious people that would wreck my life. And I don't want to call it on. I don't want putting the information out for other people to go and reckon with, but I'm just a little bit scared to attack them directly myself for that reason, you know.
That's a fair comment. You've got to protect yourself and your son first and foremost, haven't you? It's, I've heard so many stories of people who have taken on the councils and they use some pretty underhand, despicable tactics.
Well, you're dealing with the bread bins and brothers then, aren't we, in the craft, and they do all sorts of snidey crap to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't really want to make myself a target. I don't mind like working in the background, you know, and I don't know, just be the silent little assassin.
Yes.
Well, what you're doing is you're gaining the information, and then you're putting it out there. If anybody uses it, I think it's important to say that if anybody uses it, then you really have to be extremely confident
in what you're doing and understand it fully, because they will put free stroke in the book. You get people go into courtrooms and they start talking about the trust element and the Sesquibi trust and stuff like that, and the judges, they like it sometimes, so they'll start questioning you, but they're very trick questions, you know, and you've got to know your game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, and I wouldn't suggest anybody would do it unless they were absolutely 100% confident. I've been in courts myself. I've tried different methods of different things for different. But I consider myself a reasonably intelligent man, but the nerves really get a hold of you as well. Don't forget. So anybody it's good that the information's out there. But I think the best way to get a result with anybody is in writing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. And when you can play a paper game, that's what's on. You know, that's what the court's going by. Unless there's a jury there, as you know, it's an administrative court, which is acting in commerce. And considering they're creating platforms and securitising things, I should imagine it's not quite all au fait with the taxman, the international taxman. So if you start looking in those areas, you might start getting a bit of leverage in those places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find not interacting with him is the best way for me.
Yeah.
The best way for me is just not even to interact, not even acknowledge that they exist. When we're talking about councils, corporations, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff they can't. You know, at the end of the day, they can only enforce with fear, their fear-based tactics, can't they? There is no enforcement. It is unenforceable at law. They can only employ private bailiffs to come and bully us. You know, that's why it then goes into the private, and you don't. I mean, I'm sure I see a story recently of somebody in somewhere like Plymouth going to prison for council tax. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, I think it was an old man, weren't it?
Really? Are people still? I can't believe that people are still going to prison for council tax. So I've seen so many people get the threat for committal, and they just never enforce it. So why are they plucking these sort of? You know, how does it happen?
Well, I think they do pick on some cases and decide to make an example of people, Lisa. Don't you find that?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure the guy I was reading about, he was a young guy, and it was only for outstanding like £1,200 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did they get him there?
The mind boggles, but again, you don't know the background to it, do you? You don't.
Absolutely, no.
If he was a vulnerable kid, he'd probably just sign anything, and then, you know, he's locked up before he knows it.
Yeah.
You've seen, like you said, the dirty underhand tactics that they'll use, and of course they'll go for the most vulnerable in society, because then that sends a message out to people to say, look, if you're going to do that, to him, and he's an old man or he's disabled or this, then what would they do to me? And it's a subconscious thing. It ensures that most people will probably not kick up too much of a stink.
Yeah.
We've just got a correction in the chat room from last Thursday's guest, Paul Webster. He said he was actually jailed for contempt, not for non-payment.
Sorry, I missed that, Andy. He was jailed for what?
Jailed for contempt rather than for non-payment.
Oh, right. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, well, that's all right then.
Yeah, you see, the way to get around that is that if you've been ordered by a court to pay your council tax, and then they take you back because you haven't paid your council tax, that is contempt of court, and that's what they've been jailed for.
Right, okay. Separate thing, which is a jailable offence. I don't think he got particularly long or anything, but yeah, it just sort of caught my eye. What was the other things I was going to think about?
Well, how do we tie mortgages in with this? What you're talking about, securitisation?
Oh, right, okay. So, basically, with your mortgages, they're all securitised. They are at the first instance once the loan note's done. But as you'll go along, you will find that it can be pulled, I do believe, up to 9 times in separate pools. But basically, what they do, again, is they'll get a whole pool of mortgages. So they'll get loads of debt mortgages. They'll get, I think they also pull like bad mortgages, some mortgages that haven't been paid, like bad debt kind of thing. And then what they'll do is they'll create a special purpose vehicle, and then they'll float that out on the stock exchange. So they'll get all of their assets together, all of their mortgages, say a portfolio, say 100 mortgages, and yet they go and float it out. So basically, I was saying, what you'll find at Companies House are the actual trust deeds, where you'll find your title number that's registered at Land Registry on Schedule A of their Private Express Trust. This was like I'll use Royal Bank of Scotland, for instance. And what you'll find is in the trust conditions, so to speak, the trust declaration, they talk about your mortgage conditions, the appointment of receivers, the right to set off, third-party rights, and all manner of things. But it basically reads as your mortgage terms and conditions. Now, they register this trust as a charge, but we don't see this charge, do we? Registered at Land Registry, which is the bit I find absolutely astounding. It's registered at Companies House because it's a commercial vehicle, because it's a loan. So then what they do is they'll go and float it off on the Channel Islands or over on the SEC or wherever they want to float it. And again, they'll set this portfolio up so that they draw interest off it monthly, the beneficiaries, or they'll draw interest off it quarterly. But what you can do is, so you'll have your Private Express trust deed over here, and that will give you all the trustees and all the people that stand in the arrangement. When you go over onto the SEC, you can find the portfolio, and then you can find when it was in its creation, its inception over there, and you can find the actual beneficiary names of people that are skimming the interest off and pocketing it. in your title's name. Crazy.
So if I've got a mortgage for let's just say £100,000, I've got £100,000 mortgage, which has been given the illusion that it's been given to me or lent to me.
Yeah. Tosh. Yeah.
But nothing has actually exchanged hands. The bank's actually given me nothing. But I'm going to pay back 3 times that.
Yeah.
And also on the back of that, it's going to be securitized, and they're going to make even more money. So, how much money do you think exchanges hands for what would you call a £100,000 loan?
Well, because you do all different sort of manner of pools, really. So you have a 1-year pool, a 3-year pool, a 10-year pool. But basically, your title could generate up to, in say 3 years, anything like up to £10 million.
Wow.
But what they do see, and this is what makes securitisation completely legal, not lawful, legal, is that they never use the asset. So your mortgage that's sitting in there for £100,000, they never use that £100,000. They use the 8 times shadow banking that they've created off of it, the £800,000, and then they go and buy in, they float them out on the pools, loads of people buy into it. So they're actually generating interest off of £900,000 if your mortgage is £1,000.
It's a whole lot of nothing that they've created, isn't it? That really, I mean, if we all just decided we weren't having it anymore and then bits of paper weren't worth jack.
Yeah, we stood up and take them off like flies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why they probably keep propping it up. Because they have to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's why we collapsed in 2007, 2008. And then the government gave them a licence to do it again and made it legal for them to shadow bank. This has been around since the 1100s, shadow banking. That's why the French government rounded up all the Knights Templars and slaughtered them on the Friday the 13th. And the terrorist attack in Paris was 700 years to the day that happened.
We've got a question from the chat here from Rotty, and Rotty's asking, has Lisa got any info that she can send to people that follow that process, or to follow that process, or have you got somewhere you could perhaps point them where they can find it if you haven't got that?
What, to find the mortgages in the pools?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what I would do first is I would look for the year I bought the mortgage. I'd go to their yearly accounts. I'd look for any special purpose vehicles or members. And if you go onto a lot of the stock exchange websites, and if you find the special purpose vehicle, you pop the name of the special purpose vehicle in, and you'll find it start popping up. Then what you need to do is marry it up over a company's house. I mean, it's a very long... What I need to do is get it down into layman's terms in a few, sort of maybe 20 steps or something, because it's not that straightforward, really. Because what you have to do is link up then offshore over on the SEC, because the SEC govern all of the stock exchanges.
That's the Securities and Exchange Commission, yeah?
Yes, and so they hold a lot of information centrally, internationally, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So they're always a good place to go as well. So if you just pop your bank, go over onto the sec.gov and pop on company filing, company search, and just pop in your bank's name or whoever the mortgage is with. If you don't get a hit on who the mortgage is with, you'll get a hit on all the major banks over there. But if you don't get a hit on the mortgage lender, try the other stock exchanges.
Mm-hmm.
The worldwide stock exchanges. That was where I sort of started my journey.
Okay, so there's quite a lot of digging involved if you're going to start digging into that, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you've got to do the company searches and look at the company structures behind them as well, because they create a whole web of deceit. It's like a knitting pattern: knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. It's like public, private, public, private, public, private. Because they can't. When you're acting in commerce, you can't take a transaction from private into private. It has to go from the private into the public, then back into the private.
Right.
When you're acting in commerce, if you're drawing down from your own trust offshore, it's a different matter.
That's the thing about it, though. It's protected because it is hugely complicated.
You'd never get to the bottom of it. I think the best thing to do is learn to do it yourself, because if you've got 100 grand equity in your property, you've just learned that you've got an asset there that you can go and generate securities of, that if you got the right information, you could potentially invest, and it would pay your mortgage monthly anyway, the interest and more.
Mm. Yeah, Rotti said that's what they were after, a step-by-step process to walk through. And how was the information found to be used? How can you use that information?
Well, very interesting question, because with like I'm saying, and I will reiterate, securitisation is not illegal. So don't fool yourself that it is. Don't fool yourself that you're going to go into court and say, my mortgage has been securitised, I shouldn't pay it. Because the judge just go, yeah, it says in your mortgage conditions there, number whatever, 17, that they can sell your mortgage. Because they're saying they've sold your mortgage, okay? Selling your mortgage is what it says, but they're securitising it, and they're unjustly enriching themselves using it. So I think there's a famous piece of case law, I was trying to think of it earlier, where it's how to lose the securitisation argument in court, and it's Paragon v Hickson or something like that, I can't think. But have a little Google and something will come up, you'll find it. And basically they made all the wrong moves. What I'd be looking to do, was I in that situation potentially, was I'd work out how much interest my title would generate, and I'd be looking for maybe some sort of offset or something like that potentially, you know.
Paragon v Smite?
No. Is there anything beginning with H? For some reason I've got a H in my head.
I don't know.
Hinkley or something.
What did you say? I've got Battleborn, Tuxera, Acronis, Dota.
Let me have a look as well, sorry. I'm sure it begins with a H. But it's basically how they lost it.
Right.
That's what barristers use. And any mortgage company that you go in against will use this case law against you.
Right. So you wouldn't recommend that people decide then tomorrow to stop paying the mortgage?
Oh, no.
And to, you know.
Listen, if you stop paying your mortgage at any point, if you want to go into a court and invoke an equitable argument, you have to go in there with a clear conscience and clean hands. Otherwise, you're not going to be listened to. So all I would advise people to do, I mean, not if you're in trouble with your mortgage, obviously. There's different ways. But if you're in honour with your mortgage and it's not a problem to pay it, do not just stop paying your mortgage. Nobody should stop paying their mortgage.
No.
Unless you found out a clear, concise route that 100% was going to work for you, you do not stop paying your mortgage. And I would go and do my own due diligence. I wouldn't believe anything that anybody told me.
No, but I suppose it's good information for people that, you know, perhaps have got nothing to lose. You know,
Right,
you're going to lose your house anyway.
Absolutely, and I'd be looking at, if you find your title in a pool, see how much interest it's generated using your title, because a title, then you're talking the equitable argument. When you go into court at law, you're going to lose a securities argument because you're dealing with the legal title. That's why you're losing.
Yeah.
Going into an you know, in a law claim, whatever you want to call it. I'm no law master, but you know, equity governs trust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
be sensible. I think that's the advice, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Do your own research, and I wouldn't be doing anything unless I see that it had worked and I had 100% full proof that it worked from somebody. It's just nice to know the makings. I mean, things to play with if you want to have a little play with securitisation. I wouldn't play with any of your assets. That's just stupid. I would play with things like, not your assets that you need to live in, sorry, but I would play with your birth certificate, I'd play with your national insurance number, I'd play with your titles that are being traded and disguised as a member in a portfolio for your council tax maybe. I mean, you do it honourably. We don't go in there bang crash. we're here and we're not paying council tax and we're doing this. Just, I thought to myself the other day, now I could be way off here, but when I found the portfolio with council taxpayers in there as members that are contributing to this portfolio that's being traded into fossil fuels, I realised that as a corporation, I can remove myself as a member from a portfolio at any time I require. I can't say I'm not paying council tax, but what do I say when I go, oh, I've just found myself, I'm in this portfolio here, take me off. I don't want to be a member. I don't want to contribute to your commerce. Because they've got no law that governs that, like they've got the Finance Act against us. So I'm interested to have a little play with things like that now. That I don't mind playing with. Resign as member. Then you're acting in commerce.
It's like everything else you need to do. There's that wise old saying, you need to choose your battles, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't like battling much either anyway. I don't, I've had the confrontations and been in the courts with lots of confrontations. I've learned so much through that, but that's no way to live. It makes your heart beat too fast. It must take years off your life. It drains your energy. Them places drain you. Come on. I always feel ill the day after a court case.
Yeah, and there are more important things in life, aren't they? And what's point in stirring the beehive if you've no need to?
Oh, absolutely, don't do it. Don't just go in there and start playing with your assets and stuff like that. Because the councils are nasty people. They'll come for your kids. They'll do whatever they can against you. They'll defame you. But if if I didn't have my little boy, I'd be lethal. I wouldn't care. But they've got a serious piece of leverage against a lot of us out there. So I wouldn't suggest anybody that has that kind of leverage to go and pick any battles with any councils. Work in the background. You find anything out, give it to a group, let them put it out. Let's do it in groups, so they can't single people out.
Safety in numbers.
Absolutely. I've just advertised the fact on the radio. Nice work, Liz. Sherlock Liz.
Yeah, well, at least they're listening. If they're listening, they know that we're being sensible.
Yeah, we're not singing and dancing and letting all their secrets go, not in a public anyway.
There's an interesting comment there in the chat room from Paul Webster, and he's saying there is a hidden power of attorney in the terms and conditions of all mortgages. You give them permission to execute a document in your name.
Correct, and that's backed up by an MRO1 form at Company's House. That's where that detailed is. Why you can't find these things anywhere, because they're acting in commerce, so it's governed in commerce. Spot on.
So folks that are looking for it are often looking in the wrong place. But surely that if you read through the terms and conditions,
that's what the judge is going to say to you. Yeah, it's in your terms and conditions. There's a lot of people use that power of attorney and had some good results. I think there's a guy at the moment doing some work with it, and he's got Land Registry behind him and stuff. So that'd be interesting to see when that one sort of comes to a head, what happens there.
Well, Skype's giving me all kind of weird messages saying the microphone's not connected, but according to my VU meters it is, so I think I'll ignore that one. Yes, the dreaded Skype. We're going to have to get that alternative or some sort of alternative sorted out because it's just getting worse and worse just lately. Have you been finding that, Lisa?
Yeah, I haven't really done too much Skyping lately, but when I have, it's been quite awful, the connection actually. And my phone's been really playing up, but I tell you what, I've never seen an overcast sky for as long as I have for these last 2 weeks. I'm wondering what's going on up there.
No, well, here we are, 1 day short of the middle of June, and I've got a winter jacket on, and I've got bare feet at the minute, but I really think I'll go and put my slippers on because my feet are freezing.
So,
yeah. It is crackers, isn't it? It is crackers.
Yeah, absolutely. The world's on its head. And quite often all we've got to do is flip it on its head. I think what we tend to do, and I've done many, many times, is make too much science out of it. Something's staring you so obviously in the face, but it can't be that, because it's just too obvious. It can't be. But what I'm finding is it is. And funnily enough, stuff that I've come back to now, was stuff that if you'd have asked me probably a year ago, I'd have gone, no, 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 you know. But I've seemed to have gone round in a bit of a circle with it because I've got the evidence, and if I can see something that's in front of my face, provable, that's good for me, you know. I don't like going with guesswork.
No, absolutely. Oh, we've got some fascinating stuff coming out from the chat room now. We've got Tobias has posted Bank of Scotland versus War and Others 2014 case law. It's not worth the paper it's written on. That's the power of attorney.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Rock is referring back to a guest who was on with him a few weeks back, Simon Spaniard, and he said that Simon says that none of the guys selling the mortgages can explain the power of attorney. That makes it illegal for them to sell the mortgage.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of reasons why a mortgage is null and void at the start, isn't it? You know, there's so many reasons. It's just an absolute farce, as we know. That's what I was saying about this power of attorney. There is somebody, I don't want to say people's names in case they don't want me to say them, kind of thing, that are working with it and has some very, very interesting results. And I'm sure that will be highly publicised when it comes to the end of its road. Like, you know, they've got some quite good people on side. Like I say, I think the Land Registry have held up a valuable argument in it. So we will see. See.
And the Land Registry itself is about to be sold off as well, isn't it?
But it's a farce anyway. Like I say, we've got charges that are not... Charges on your property would normally show on your Land Registry. Believe me, there's charges on your properties that are nothing to do with Land Registry because they're charged commercially. And that's why we can never find half this stuff, because it's done in the private commercially. You know, when people are going on this trust, whatever it is, to find out if they've, you know, got the liability order for the council tax and there's nothing on there. No, it's registered differently. It's registered commercially because we are commercial entities. They're using our birth certificates and stuff, you know. I just can't express enough. Commercial.
We've got an interesting question here from Peanut in the chat room, Lisa. And Peanut is asking, does a company, i.e. insolvency support services, who was dealing with an insolvency need to have a license to practice, and am I entitled to see it via freedom of information request?
I don't know that factually. I wouldn't like to claim to. And I take if he's talking about freedom of information request, that it's information that's not readily available already.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't like to say. I don't know.
No, that's fair enough. We the last thing we want to be doing is giving people advice that we're not sure about. So
yeah. No, I don't know that. Sorry. But no, I mean, it's just one big magical farce, you know. It's just one big game. It's a big pantomime. You know, I think when you learn about the commerce behind the courts, for instance, it makes you a bit more dangerous to them. They're not going to poke you around so much.
Interesting comment there about from Dr. Rock. He says, when asked what is sound and lawful about mortgages, the Spaniard stays completely silent, not something he otherwise does very much.
No, absolutely. Yeah, see, Simon's sort of red hot on the mortgages. I'm not really with the old mortgage terms and conditions and stuff like that. I'm not very hot, you know. I just understand securitisation. I can see the other documents that they're holding over a company's house and what they're trying to say. What I understand about trust is that it trumps legislation, because you see these documents, they write out and write in what legislation they pick and choose, you know. The law. The trust is governed by its own law. That is the law. Whatever's written in that trust, that's where they say you write your law with your hand. You do if you understand what you're writing. Kind of thing, you know.
Okay, well, it's absolutely great to have you here again, Lisa. And the first hour has just about flown past. So what we normally do at this time, we play a quick tune to give us a chance to freshen up and have a comfort break if we need one. So we've got a little bit of advice on what tunes to play tonight from Kevin Mark. So the first one we're going to play seems quite appropriate. Our House from Madness. It's all madness, isn't it? We'll be back in 5 minutes, folks. And welcome back to Raconteurs News this Tuesday evening, Tuesday the 14th of June. And as always, I've got Jason with me. And tonight we're joined by Lisa Tanner. Welcome back, Lisa.
Thank you.
So we're going to take a little bit of a different track in the second part of the show. So where would you like to go with that, Lisa?
Well, I was just going to talk about I mentioned before in the first half about where our council tax is going and how they're securitising it, because I know a lot of people were up in arms over recent months about the council tax pots having surpluses of £7 million and such, and I thought it was very interesting when I found a pool of 200 million that our council tax was contributing towards, basically how the police are meant to be paid via our council tax and stuff as well, but the police have their own fund that they're securitising from and stuff like that. But basically, how I found the councils and what they were actually doing was, I come from Kent, so I put in Kent County. There's a website you can go on. It's a legal entity identifier. So if you go on Google and pop in legal entity identifier, it should bring you up something like lei.com or .co.uk. And then what to do is put your own town name or your county name with county after it, and just scan through, and you will start finding things. Now, I found ours was called the Kent County Council Superannuation Fund. And what they disguise it as initially is where they invest the councillors' pensions. But when you start looking into it, and like I say, I actually found the portfolio that is attached to it and all their members, their special purpose vehicles. We are listed, the council taxpayers, as members that are contributing to this portfolio that's being floated out there. So, we can actually prove where the money's going, which is not where it's supposed to be going. I mean, I don't know about anybody else's areas, but mine, everybody around here has been complaining the grass has not been cut recently, that the potholes in the road are just disgusting, there's rubbish everywhere. I don't know if other people have noticed it in their areas. I do come from a bit of a place. It's neat. Bit of train spotting around here. No. But, it's just, I don't know quite what they think they're doing with the money and how they can justify pinching £3 by attachments of earnings from people's benefits when they're trading globally on the stock exchanges. And more importantly, I would like to know, and I haven't got to the end of yet because I just haven't had the time, is know who the actual beneficiaries are that are skimming the interest from the pools. Because they're people beneficiaries. There's going to be a dot to this. There's going to be, Lord. That's what you normally find when you get to the bottom of these. The actual holding companies and stuff, some really quite influential people you start finding. That's basically where we can prove our council tax monies are going. So I would urge anybody to take that exercise in their local area and find the annuation pots. You should normally find one that are linked to the police as well. I think the one in my area was victim support something they were using. They make up pie in the sky names that you would just never link to them, these special purpose vehicles and stuff. It is a complete web of deceit. But the interesting part is there is always a beneficiary drawing down from these funds. And it isn't us. Yet we're paying in. What benefit are we getting? We're not even getting our grass cut,
Exactly, yeah.
We're getting...
Yeah,
we're getting squeezed the life out of us for every penny we've got.
I mean, the place where I live, it's a small town on the East Coast, and from what I've read, the population has increased about sixfold since 1992, when they started bringing Portuguese and Polish labourers in, and the town is absolutely flooded with Latvians, Lithuanians. They're all here to try and better themselves financially, but unfortunately the local people are blaming the wrong people, and it's really destroyed the community spirit in the town, because you can walk from one end of the town to the other and never hear an English voice spoken. It really is that serious.
All by design.
Yeah. But you see, the people who are here, they're blaming the wrong people. They're blaming the people who are over here trying to better their lives instead of blaming the people who are actually causing it.
Blame the bankers. That's who we want to blame. It's them that are giving all these bastards, the facility to trade us. It's the central banks.
Well, I think
I
that.
blame Noel Edmonds.
Yeah, and Mr. Blobby.
Yeah, come on, we've got to blame a bit of Tony Blair as well.
Oh God, Diana. Margaret Thatcher. She was the one who sold and privatised all our assets, wasn't she? The water. Everybody forgets you didn't used to have to pay for water. It was just a fixed yearly thing for, keep the pipes clean, and that's fair enough. But it's the greed element, isn't it? And especially when you see what they're floating and what they're earning in interest.
Mm-hmm.
This is the part that sickens me, is we're being squeezed for everything, yet, we have nothing.
Yeah, I mean, all those utilities, they really belong to the people of the country. The outrageous bills that we're being presented with are a complete scam.
Yeah, they securitise all that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I found a company securitising your bankruptcies.
Really?
Yeah, work that one out. They create a fictitious entity to make a bankruptcy. We then go to court answering to the fictitious entity and go on, yeah, that's me, that's the fictitious entity. Rock up on that bankruptcy meeting with your birth certificate. So there you go, sir. Offset it using that.
Wow. The depth and breadth of the scams is quite amazing. I mean, we've had Gordon Bowden and his Pandora's Box investigations team on a couple of times now, and just blows my mind what they've uncovered.
Yeah, you do along the way. You do. You can fit every little piece into the jigsaw puzzle, and you get the whole picture. And it's everybody's involved. When we speak about commerce, there is no country divide. There is no divide. It's globally covered. It's globally covered by the UCC. That's what makes your birth certificate governed by the UCC.
Yes, I've just been corrected by Paul Webster in chat. Thank you, Paul. He says you still don't have to pay for gas, water or electric. The privatisation was only for the running of the grid, not the grid itself.
Yes.
Sorry about the dodgy keyboard. And he said commerce is bills of exchange. Oh, no, that's Kevin now. Kevin's chimed in with commerce is bills of exchange. And that's the Bills of Exchange Act of 1882, isn't it, off the top of my head?
So, yeah. I mean, which is, because what we're playing a game with as well when we start talking about these acts is quite often we'll go in with something that not be a primary piece of legislation. So they're trumping us, So we're going in with a bit of private or a bit of subordinate legislation. They're trumping us with the prime legislation, the trump cards. So when we understand that there's all different types of legislation as well, that gives us a bit more of a fighting chance, I mean, quite often, a lot of people are going into administrative courts with constitutional arguments, and they can't be heard in an administrative court. A constitutional argument will be heard at a court of appeal, in a chancery court. Human rights are not applicable when you're dealing in commerce and administration. That's why they're not getting heard. We think we're losing the cases. We're applying the right arguments. It's a brilliant bundle. We're just putting it in the wrong court.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So really, again, that reiterates the point we made earlier that so many people will hear about this and think, "Oh my God, I need to get stuck into this." But in reality, you need to do a lot of work and get
a lot of time, a lot of research. I've spent a lot of hours on my own researching this. It's been a bit long and a bit boring, but it's brought me to where I am, and I'm happy with that. And I've formed a few sort of new sort of work colleagues, if you like, and stuff like that. A few really interesting guys I've been working with for very reliable information. So I find that refreshing that I can find the proof for everything that we speak of, I mean, when we understand who we are in these relations, then we can go down the route of looking at splitting the allodial title and things like that,
Yeah.
That's another story for another show, and that's very deep.
Yeah.
I don't claim to fully understand it myself, so I don't, but we'll get there. But then once you understand the legal and the equitable, and you understand what arguments we're taking where, I think,
Yeah, well, I think you might be doing some good, Lisa, because it seems like you broke the internet. Dr. Rock's just been looking for the Bills of Exchange Act 1882, and gov.uk says it's currently not working, so I don't know if that's down to you or not, but
oops.
if it was, well done.
Yeah, we have that effect. We put a little video up a while back that got quite a few views in a couple of weeks. It got like 1 million hits in 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
But yeah, I think that was just because they see the yellow things for the police and they all looked a bit exciting, a bit dramatic.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, anything where anybody's videoing the police tends to get quite a lot of hits these days, and I suppose that's quite natural given the absolutely disgusting way in which so many police officers are behaving these days.
Yeah, I've noticed them filming us as well now, aren't they?
Mm. Oh yes, with the intelligence gatherers, as they call them, isn't it?
Police intelligence, bit of an oxymoron.
Special editing department back at the station,
Yeah.
before they actually go to the court. Don't have sound and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, we've chanced upon very interesting times. We're on to them. We know their game. All the time they're not touching assets. Remember, it's not illegal. Securitisation is not illegal.
Right.
But they do have to be honourable about it. They can't just sell your mortgage and not tell you. So you've got a little argument, maybe not a winning argument, but a nice little way to box them up is to say, have you sold my mortgage or not sold my mortgage? Have you securitised my mortgage? And just watch them all say no, and get it recorded. Say, write them a letter and ask it, to get it in writing. And then ask for a securitisation details, and then you've got them at least under the Data Protection Act because they don't supply the data that is there and can prove is there.
Interesting little snippet there posted by Kev Mark. Thanks, Kev. And he says, first of all, we have Lord Diplock in Attorney General versus Times Newspapers Limit 1974, and outlines the various ways which the due administration of justice might be prejudiced. The due administration of justice requires first that all citizens should have unhindered access to the constitutionally established, and then it runs out. So, yeah, interesting one there. If you could post the end of that as Kev.
People that you'll take your argument to the county court where you've been served with the action, and probably 99% of cases are lost at a county court level because they can't hear the constitutional arguments. Once you get up to the the Chancery Court, the equitable court, I can't promise because I'm just watching people be stitched up left, right and centre, if I'm honest. The only successes I'm seeing are people that have already asset protected. If you're already asset protected, you're laughing.
Yeah.
Because trust law trumps legislation. So, the law of the trust is going to be what gets the titles back to people and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, it would never have existed without you going into that bank and signing that, whatever it was you signed, piece of fucking paper. It might as well have been toilet paper.
Yeah, absolutely. It is an absolute class quote here from Paul Webster. He says, the QC in my case exclaimed, all original documents are destroyed at the Land Registry. What on earth would they be doing, destroying original documents?
Exactly. What's it got to do with them? No wonder they're trying to privatise them. Honestly, they're bent as a 9-bod note. What's the point in them being there when there are clearly, I can prove it to you guys, that there are charges on your property that are not registered at Land Registry.
Mm-hmm.
I can prove that to you guys. They're registered as charges commercially at Company's House. Once we understand the game, I think then we can, look, because that is unjust enrichment. However they want to put it, that is unjust enrichment using your title. Mm-hmm. So there's got to be rights for third party if your title's generated it. Third Party Rights Act 1999.
Ah, right. Oh, we've just got the end of that quote that Kev posted there. Unfortunately, you can't post too much in the one go in the chat room, and I'll just go back to the start of the quote. It says, "The due administration of justice requires that all citizens should have unhindered access to the constitutionally established courts of criminal or civil jurisdiction for the determination of disputes as their legal rights and liabilities. Secondly, that they should be able to rely upon obtaining in the courts the..."
Notice it said criminally, and criminal, yep, you can have your constitutional arguments all day long. Civilly you can, but in the high courts.
Yeah. And obtaining in the courts the arbitrament of a tribunal which is free from... and then it tails out again. We've lost the end of that.
Effectively, tribunals. Now, we're only governed by a tribunal in relation to our trust, okay? That's anything to do with benefit and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Judges, now we complain about judges and think we're going to get them done for treason and stuff like that. It's just not the case because they're not governed in that way. Remember, what we're doing is we're making a complaint to the Crown, which is the employer of the judge. Mm-hmm. So that's like me going into the McDonald's and saying, I want to complain about a member of your staff. So the manager of McDonald's is going to fight the claim kind of thing. But what's going to happen is they're going to get disciplinary action. They're not going to get criminal action because it's done in the line of their duty. And it isn't nothing, I mean, unless they've stabbed somebody, you know, then it's criminal. But they're governed more by the Equalities Act and the Companies Act of 2006. Because, again, it's commerce, and they're acting in a role of commerce for the Crown. The Crown is their employer. So we're going, oh, Mr. Crown, he's done me a wrong. And they go, oh, right, well, you shouldn't have done that because they're disabled or they're this and they're that. You're going to have a disciplinary. So they'll deal with them in a tribunal. They won't deal with them in a court. They'll deal with them in a tribunal. Unless it's a criminal act, fraud or, you know, whatever.
Uh-huh.
So that's very interesting when you differentiate between the tribunal and the court, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm learning loads tonight. The question is whether my old lorry driver's brain is going to let it all sink in.
Oh, it will do. It'll come, and you'll see other information and snippets in the future, and you go, oh, yeah, because I remember being spoken to like this about various things, you know, and you're like, wow, that's just blowing my mind. You're sort of picking up with it, but it's sort of going over your head. But it'll all sink in. Just remember, it's all business.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Oh, we're getting the doc saying that how can you stamp a non-existent document and then charge stamp duty for bonded storage? Paul Webster's replied with, you can't. Part of the scam is they suck you into fraud. You can't put a charge on a property that you don't own, and that's the case with most mortgages.
They do have a right to it because what they'll do is they put it into this portfolio that's held in trust. And so they'll have a trust deed.
Ah, right, I see.
Listed over the pool. Not over the property, it's over the pool. But your title's in. Yeah?
Oh, I see, yeah.
So it's not a charge over the property as such. I should have been a bit more defined myself more there. Not a
charge over the pool that your property is in.
Correct, which means that your mortgage is governed by the rules of that pool, and it tells you that in the trust deed. So it says if default, you can appoint a receiver to go in and do this, if that, power of attorney, do this, do that, right to set off, you know, and all that old jazz.
Mm.
So.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting and complicated game, and to be part of it, I suppose there's not very many people know the entire game. You know, people will know their little part in it, but they'll not know the entire game. So, what I want to ask you is your head the size of a medicine ball with all this information stored in it?
No, but you know, I find it amazing about people's heads. You know, they store information. I find it amazing how people can sing, and before they actually open their mouth and the noise comes out, they know what pitch it's got to be. So I just think humans are quite amazing, really, in general.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that one. Yeah, we've interviewed quite a few amazing people, haven't we? And
well, that's it.
Included, Lisa.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the information that you managed to uncover there, Lisa. And talking of amazing people, We had someone on a few weeks ago who, unfortunately, his dog went missing just before the start of the show, and he had to keep his phone line open. And that was David Halpern, a retired surgeon who spent £95,000 of his own money taking food aid out to Gaza, and he actually went with it and made sure it was delivered to the people who needed it. He's also done a great deal of work to uncover the scandal that was the cover-up of Dr. David Kelly's death, and many more things beside. But I'm happy to say that I've made contact with David this week, and David's going to be joining us on Thursday night at 7 o'clock before Dr. Rock, and we'll have to keep our fingers crossed that we do get the full 2 hours with him. And
yeah. Any news on Stan?
Stan, yes, Stan. I got quite surprised when I found out that Stan is actually a female, but Stan has been found alive and well, and is back at home and getting a lot of fuss.
Oh, great news. The internet will break at that news.
Well, I was dreading ringing David because I just didn't want to hear bad news about Stan. I know how fond he was of Stan, and I thought, I don't know how I'm going to cope with this, and the upset it's going to cause, dredging it all up again. But thankfully, it's good news, and really looking forward to having David on Thursday. And then we've got a real coup for the following Tuesday, a week today, as we've got something that's quite out of our normal range. We've got a WBF Cruiserweight Boxing World Champion coming on to speak to us. But he's not coming on to talk about boxing as such. He's talking about some incredible health benefits that he's got from something as simple as inclining your bed by raising the head of the bed by 6 inches. Now, I know I've got benefits, so has my partner. Jason, you've had benefits, but what we're going to be able to show people is that this is not just for sick people that get benefits. Tony's an athlete, and he found at the age of 42 he could fight against a 30-something machine robot-like fighting machine, and for each of the 12 rounds he stood in between the rounds. He didn't even sit down because Andrew had advised him that helps your body recover more quickly, and he said he felt as fresh muscularly at the end of 12 rounds as he did at the start of the first round. So I'm really looking forward to speaking to Tony and having Andrew back on again, because Andrew's probably one of the most popular guests we've ever had. I've never had as much feedback as I've had from Andrew.
Yeah, he's certainly popular in this house. My missus made a comment to me yesterday, and she said, I had a headache today. She said, I had a headache today, and then I realised that I have not had a headache for months. She just had a little headache, came on, and it reminded her that because she used to have migraines, terrible migraines.
Yeah.
And she just said it just gave me, just made me think, wow, I ain't had a headache. So when you do this inclined bed therapy, and if you've not been ill, I mean, I've been quite ill, so I've noticed the benefits a lot more. But even people that haven't been ill or not ill, even if you've got little niggles or things like that, it really is amazing, and I'm really looking forward to that show.
Well, when you get in your 40s and 50s and beyond, you've always got a few aches and pains somewhere, and you start to get a bit tired and that sort of thing, and it's made a massive you used the phrase the other night when we were having a conversation that it had transformed your life, and I think it's done the same for us and so many other people we speak to. We've even got Rick Dwyer over there in Canada. He's doing it.
How do you incline your bed?
You can either get some bed raisers from off internet site, Amazon do them, eBay do them, or you can go to a mobility shop and they sell them for people raising their beds. So if your bed's a bit low for getting in and out of, and people also use them under chairs as well.
So it's like a little ramp that sort of just raises the head. part at the end?
What you find is they're usually like an upturned plant pot that's made of a lot sturdier stuff, or you can get them made out of solid blocks of wood. I mean, if you want to do it on the cheap, just get a couple of bricks. You know, so long as you're as close as you can get to 6 inches, that's the optimum measurement. I mean, if you haven't tried it, Lisa, just try it. The big difference it made for me, the massive difference, is that I've always been one of those people. It didn't matter whether I slept 2 hours or 12 hours. I always woke up tired. You know, really, it'd take me a couple of hours to get going in the morning. And from day one, when I raised the bed, I just got up in the morning and I felt really strange, and I couldn't work out what it was. And
so what does it do? Is it keeping the blood to the lower half of the body or something?
no, what it does, it encourages your circulatory systems, the blood and the lymphatic, and there's another one that I can't remember, to work more effectively, because they basically work on gravity. And Andrew's actually an engineer, the guy that's discovered this, but it turns out he's not really discovered it. I think he's rediscovered it, because he noticed that the goods from ancient Egyptian tombs, there's a few beds in there, and if you notice, all the beds are on a slight angle. And he actually rang one of the museums that had one of these beds and asked them if they would kindly measure the difference between the head and the bed end, the head and the foot end, and it came back at 6 inches. So he's actually rediscovered something that people knew thousands of years ago.
Interesting, the number 6 and that 369 with the Tesla. Have you seen the little short clip? It's the 369. If you can figure out the significance of that, you can unlock the key to the universe.
Oh yeah, that Marco Rodin did that with his Rodin coil, didn't he?
Right, yeah.
And another little thing I'd like. He's just sent me a message, and he said, "Ever since I raised my bed, I have an erection all night long." So another plus. So and I've got to say as well,
ladies,
from my own personal experience, it does help in that department. I think I had an erection for 3 days solid. Well, I say solid. I mean, there were a little bit of give in it, but you know, it really does. It sparks all that up again.
I presume it's kind of not a good idea to go and visit your mum while you're in that state, then.
Yeah.
Well, not in tight shorts, anyway.
Don't do it to your dad's bed if he lives in a care home.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Fantastic. Yeah, but yeah, it looks like it's going to be a good show next week. But I think we should get back to our guest this evening, Lisa. So we've got about half an hour left.
Yeah.
To the top of the hour, and then what would, for this last half hour? What would you like to cover? What would you like to bring up? Anything in particular? Anything securitisation wise that we've not covered so far?
No, I think I don't really know. Like I say, what I would like to just get across to people is to stop thinking that we're only governed by the laws of the UK, because that simply, honestly and utterly isn't the case. We're international entities, you know, and we're acting in commerce, so the UCC is definitely applicable and somewhere to look. And if you figure out the background of what's going on in these places, like the financial elements behind courts and stuff like that, and then understand how they're doing that, then that's when you might be able to find your way in. And probably you wouldn't win a public court case, you'd get invited into a side room or something, I'm sure. But I'm sure if you go in armed with the right knowledge and know you are in that situation, people might start having a bit of success. But I think quite often, unfortunately, where we've been going wrong over the past sort of year or so is, if I was going to lose my house, I can understand that drumming up support is good and stuff like that. But if you're going to go into the courts and you've got really valid arguments, I think by trying to publicise it, it's just, they're not going to let you through. if you've got a good argument and that, and you can go through in the quiet, you'll get through a lot quicker than if you're trying to sort of publicise it and bring down an entire system, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we've seen that we a lot of different people that have had highly publicised cases and things, and I don't think there's anybody. I don't think anybody would blame them for these highly publicised cases. But they very rarely turn out in their favour, do they?
No, absolutely. And, they'll spend a lot of money to defame those kind of cases, ultimately, because, unfortunately, we're dealing with some really, vicious mafia-style bullies that are in control of this. They're not going to give up the gauntlet easy. They're not going to just lie down and let us take our cake, are they?
Well, I suppose a pretty clear example that most people will be familiar with of what lengths they will go to get the result that it doesn't matter what it costs them, as the case of Tom Crawford, with about 40 grand outstanding, claimed to be outstanding, and they spent about £500,000 getting Tom's house off him.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? It's, and it's a lot of the media pretend to be covering things and stuff like that. At the end of the day, the media covered someone losing their home, and that's it. They've had no fair and just result as yet. I don't know where they're at. It's not something that I've followed closely. But
well, and also they put their own particular brand of spin on it. When you see reporting on Tom Crawford's case, I don't think I've seen an article in any mainstream newspaper that doesn't begin with cancer victim Tom Crawford. That's irrelevant. It's got nothing to do with the argument.
Yeah, it doesn't win anyone anything, does it? It's I don't know. It's a funny old game, isn't it? Because we all know
It's a funny old game.
We have the right to travel, but you go out there and try and exercise that right. We don't hold the title to have that right as yet. I know it's something people feel we claim and we should know we are, but there are steps that you need to take if you want to split your allodial title and stuff like that and be recognised for having the right to travel and stuff, Though we've already got it anyway. It's been taken from us,
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's ways.
There's ways and means, and there's always there's always going to be people that are testing these courts, and so as long as we keep at it, I don't see what we've got to lose.
No, absolutely. Just keep throwing what you think, But like I say, I can't express enough. Do your own due diligence. Do not just simply listen to somebody and go out there, with a millibite of the information, if you like. Because I know I've been guilty of that myself, gone into courts, trying to use a piece of information I know nothing about. If you've got something to lose, i.e. a home or something, don't, it's not the time to play unless you've got to, and I mean, if you've got the guts to, then do it. And I admire anyone that has, but, I just think there's easier ways. There's a lot easier ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another example that's another person that's been made an example raised by Paul Webster there, Anthony Carlin, the police service Northern Ireland officer who actually arrested the judge. And,
I met him.
You did? Oh, great.
I've met him. We went to some sort of conference of Ben Gilroy's, and they were talking about securitisation there. And they were saying, like a lot of people here, that we're not quite as up as them with all these bits and bobs, But that guy, I was down having a cigarette, and the security guard come up to me and went, "Oh, what's going on up there?" And I said something, and he went, "Well, you want to be careful because that bloke who's been talking is a policeman." And it was that Anthony Carlin, and I went, "Really?" So I went up to my friend that I was with at the time and went, "Someone just told me he's a policeman." So we waited till the end and went over to the guy and had a chat with him. And my friend said, "Are you a policeman?" And he said, yeah, I haven't said anything because this and that, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, he told us about his case and what his intention was. But then, yeah, I followed that, and he got locked up. We had, the arguments are valid. I've seen it myself. I've seen perfectly reasonable applications go into courts be blocked.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, that's one thing they are good at.
Yeah. I mean, I had a chat with a master one day, and they said that about 80% of the paperwork that they had in the Royal Courts of Justice and Chancery was just floating around there, taking up lots of unnecessary time because they were incorrect applications that were never going to go through.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So, but I've had some interesting times at the Royal Courts of Justice as well, and I learnt a little trick in the end. I thought, create scenarios. So I would go up there with a trust deed, and on that trust deed I'd be a trustee, and I'd say, my beneficiary is making unreasonable demands of me. What do I do? And they do open up if you go up there with a little trust deed and stuff like that. And we learned one day that as trustee, I was an officer of the court. So that would grant you a rights of audience and things like that,
Wow, that's really worth knowing that.
Yeah, so I've had a little play and played with a few little scenarios and sort of made up a few little things. And, you get your little snippets of information that way. But, yeah, it's interesting times. It is interesting times. But scary because, obviously, we're heading for a bit of a crash and they're coming out with the... they want everything. They want everything back.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, they can kill us, but they can't eat us. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. We might have to eat them if we start getting hungry, though, and the old supermarkets shut, because of the lack of education of how to look after ourselves as human beings. I mean, really, you'd think that the first lesson you would learn for 3 years in preschool and school and that is how to grow potatoes and fend for yourself as a human being, It's crazy that they've even taken away like our manageability over our own food sources and stuff like that. That if the supermarkets closed tomorrow, we would be fluffed. It's amazing. I find it amazing.
Yeah, well, going back to the almost to the Victorian era when I was at school, we had a school playing field that was on two sides of the school. And when we started at this new school, we actually dug up part of the playing field and planted a garden, and we learned how to grow all kinds of stuff. But I would imagine
we at my school when I was little, we had an actual farm, and we used to be able to nominate ourselves to go and get the eggs and clean the rabbits out and stuff at weekends. And there was a couple of sheep and that there, but there's nothing like that now, is there? They get taught how to. In my son's school, they have a dance lesson now called Jiggle Biz or something like that, and they learn to dance like Beyonce and these other degenerate sort of people that want to lead our kids off down the garden path and sexualise them,
Yeah,
dirty bastards, I think we call them.
Yeah, that's it, pedos.
Well, here we go. Mithrin says they can eat me. I'm going to give one of them the shit. So, yeah.
Fair play, mate. Fair play. Yeah, if it looks like it's coming, people, fill yourself with so much junk so that if they do eat us, we'll kill them. Kill them with our acidic bodies.
Well, I think Mithrin also said earlier on that he can see that it's going to end up in pitchforks.
Yeah, it will for some. It will for some. Well, they've been buying property, these rich tycoons, haven't they, over in New Zealand for the last couple of years with runways and stuff so that they can make a quick exit and a quick landing. I think even David Cameron's bought property in New Zealand.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that's worth knowing. But much as I'd love to do several unpleasant things to him, I really couldn't be asked to chase him all the way to New Zealand.
Well, the thing is, at the end of the day, when we break it down to the core, he's just a puppet on a string for the masters. So it's like with the EU. Do we want to be ruled by a bunch of EU tosspots, or do we want to be ruled by UK tosspots? They are all tosspots, and we are still being ruled. So that's my sum up of the EU referendum.
That's it. I mean, there was an old colleague of mine, he used to have a favourite saying when they talked about elections, and he said, yeah, you've got a choice. Do you want a punch in the face or a kick in the balls?
Exactly, the illusion of choice, isn't it?
Mm.
I got taught to give people those types of choices when I got taught to do sales and stuff,
Mm.
Yeah, tricking people into doing things.
Absolutely. Looking at the buying signals and stuff like that, very manipulative.
Oh yeah. I was involved in sales myself, but I wasn't terribly successful because I respected people's choices that they
Yeah,
made.
I was all right if I believed in my product. You know, if I thought I was doing good and I believed in what I was selling, and I think that's with anybody, you'll excel. But when you don't believe in your product and you know you're having people over, I mean, that's why I think in the end I never went back to recruitment, because it makes you into a very callous person playing God with people's lives, and you know, making redundancies, choosing out of them 20 people who's going to be able to feed their kids at the end of the week and stuff. It was god awful.
Mm.
Not my choice to make, you know, and I can't believe they've made a market for that.
Well, me and Heath, when we were 17, we used to sell burglar alarms door to door. And that were just lies, basically. Just tell lies.
Yeah. I won't tell you what I used to sell when I was 17. No, not really.
Well, oh, go on, do tell us this.
No.
It was
the radio, darling.
It wasn't burglar alarms that I sold, Jason. I sold fire extinguishers. And when I first got into it, I thought, yeah, I quite like this. Because you're providing people with something that's useful and might save them in the event of an awful incident. But what I realised very quickly was that the way people were making such good sales figures is they were preying on vulnerable people and putting the fear of God into them, and that's how they made the sales. And when I realised that was happening, I just got on the train and came home. I'd quit.
Yeah. I've walked into places. I was quite successful as a youngster for quite a big recruitment agency, and I remember walking in there one day, but I used to do yoga and that at that point, and I had a bit of strong parenting. I had a funny dad, but I remember going in there one day, and you know, I was in their company magazine, High Earner, and thinking, I don't want to be here anymore. And I remember sitting down at my desk and typing out a resignation letter and giving my week's notice, and just wanted to go, so I'd go, you know. It's not, I wouldn't suggest people to just leave their jobs and that. I had a mum and dad's house to back me up at the time, you know. But yeah, I think when you truly don't want to be somewhere, no amount of money is going to it take years off your life, you know.
Yeah. That's right. There's no substitute for being happy in whatever you're doing. And if you're ripping people off, you can't be happy.
No, that's right. Now, with the right education, as you know, we go to you know, the schools where we're taught to be employed, the private schools are taught to be employers. They're taught this stuff. They're taught securitisation. They're taught the system and how it works. That's why they take 98% of the top jobs in this country just from 2 schools out of the country. You know, Eton and Cambridge, isn't it? They have the most intake and stuff like that. But what there is there's another society, see, that moves way above those lot. They're just little pawns in the game, and it's the bankers, guys. Every war's a bankers' war.
Mm.
No?
They always win, don't they?
They will, because they manipulate the financial markets.
Yeah, there was a film on YouTube with that title recently, wasn't it? Was it JFK to 9/11? All wars are bankers' wars.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it, but yeah, that's the truth. That really is the truth. They manipulate the market. Everywhere we're at war with at the moment is everywhere that don't want a central bank, that don't want to use the dollar. You know, you haven't got to open your eyes sort of too wide to see that it's the bankers. They'll collapse the market. You know, they know everything that's going on. They do all the blue screen banking, arms trade, all the government, the arms that they're dealing and stuff. There's always a paper trail for that. Who do you think is facilitating it? It's only the bankers that can allow these types of transactions to happen, normally on a blue screen. You know?
And then you start looking into the massive amount of money that's made out of government by trafficking illegal drugs.
Trafficking children.
And yes, trafficking children. I mean, I was quite shocked, but not particularly surprised to discover that out in leafy rural Lincolnshire the other week, there was a guy from our town arrested for slavery and people trafficking.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's what we're getting into with the immigration here.
Well,
I've seen for myself, just in the flats where we live, you know, how when someone's got their window open at night, you get a reflection. It's almost like a mirror. You can see into their room. I've seen a room that has got nothing in apart from a load of mattresses strewn on the floor. You know, and they get these people over here promising them the earth. They end up in a 2-bedroom flat with maybe 12 or 15 mattresses in, and they take £100 a week out of their wages to pay for the digs.
yeah, it's awful. Do you know, down the road from me, there was a massive police raid, and they're quite big houses, and there was loads of Chinese people coming out. And in one room, there was apparently I don't know, however many mattresses. But what they'd done in the whole house was on top of the carpets, they'd just got loads of soil, and they grew loads of cannabis plants, but just out of the carpet on soil and stuff, like the whole house, other than the one room they were sleeping in. But that's someone else's house. That's a bit out of order, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I thought it was quite funny as well.
I could imagine that wouldn't do a lot of good for the floorboards after a while.
No.
But anyone growing cannabis, I think that's a noble venture, and it's something we're very big on here at Raconteurs.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Well, we believe everybody should should learn to grow plants,
Mm.
and the
Yeah.
best one to learn to grow is obviously cannabis
Yeah,
or
yeah.
tomatoes, if you like
Yeah,
tomatoes.
I love growing tomato plants. I do.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even if you haven't got a garden outside, you can grow some tomatoes.
Create a rooftop terrace.
Well,
Yeah.
we haven't got a rooftop, but what I did the
You've got a
other
loft.
year, yeah, but we can't get in it, so that's unfortunate. But what I did the other year, I got one of those self-watering window boxes from Aldi,
Alright.
and it's just got like a little platform at the bottom that's raised up, and it has a reservoir of water underneath. And I just put some seeds from some cherry tomatoes that I was eating in this window box, and I got several pounds of cherry tomatoes just off a window box that's about 3 foot long. And when the tomatoes had finished cropping, I put some chili seeds in there as well, and I had an amazing crop of chilies. I had to dry most of them because I just couldn't eat them fast enough, even though I love chilies.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. The last time I bought a grow bag, and I didn't even get the seeds planted in it. By the time I just made some slopdosh. Made some slopdosh pies.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
What's that? I've never heard of that.
But wait, just put water in mud, and you just get some slopdosh, muddy stuff.
And nothing happens.
And so it was just like me playing in it for that, and I never really got my seeds in. So unfortunate that I've not got green fingers, brown ones, but not green.
I'm not sure if that's good or not, brown ones. Shut up, me.
Oh, yeah. I've just got Mithrin commenting there in the chat room. He said that's a standard grow house. 2 illegals and 1 is normally never allowed to leave the stash. Normally it's a rented house as well.
Yeah, that's right. It was a rented house.
Mm.
Yeah.
He says they often get 50 grand a crop.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
I'll introduce myself next time.
Well, the unfortunate part is the people who are living in there and tending the crop probably don't get a bowl of rice out of it. Then.
Oh, it's awful. How about them cockle pickers that all got drowned, didn't they? Where was that?
On Morecambe Bay.
Yeah, that was awful, wasn't it? Bloody hell.
Mm.
They just waited.
Yeah. Yeah, that was dreadful.
So obedient. It is awful, and it just goes on more than we care to imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. It's it's a long time ago, that, isn't it now? It must be 10 or 12 years.
Yeah, a good while ago.
It's got to be getting on that way, yeah. I mean, when I heard about it happening, I thought, how can anybody be that daft as to get drowned in Morecambe Bay? I know that you get cut off by the tides, but once you see the tide coming in, you'd run like hell to get back in. But then obviously they didn't know the dangers. They weren't alert to the dangers, and they were just terrified in a strange land, and met their deaths because of it. Very sad.
Yeah, there was a local guy actually from around here. somebody I do know personally. He was on the news, Sky News everywhere the other day, and he was one of the people that got found in the English Channel, sinking in that boat with the immigrants.
Really? There was a guy from your area who was in the boat?
Yeah, he was the Commonwealth Judo gold champ for Great Britain.
Really?
And he used to go out with my friend, and basically I was watching the news, and his picture come up everywhere, and he was sinking on a boat in the middle of the English Channel with some immigrants.
Okay. It begs the question, what on earth was he doing there?
Oh, well, God only knows. You know, I was shocked but not surprised.
Yeah, that's a phrase I keep finding myself using more and more lately.
Absolutely. When you come to the end of everything, but every time I come to the end of it is commerce. And what I do know is that they evade a lot of tax that they are liable for. So if you want to start questioning people's tax positions while they're committing this commerce, that's a good little place to start.
Oh, excellent. So, yeah, we've got about 5 minutes left. So, is there anything that you've missed that you feel you'd need to give out, or is there any links you'd like to give out to people where they can...
I mean, like I say, just go and have a little surf about. Have a look on the sec.gov, the Channel Islands Stock Exchange, the London Stock Exchange, obviously. Do the company checks. Look at their annual figures. And just, you know, as soon as you can find a special purpose vehicle, you can start looking into that and start sort of branching off from there, really. But just try and sort of gain some form of understanding of the commerce side of things, because it really sort of helps a lot, you know. It'll lead you down the right path, and it's a path that you have more control over than we do by entering the courts.
I noticed, I've just tried to add you on Facebook, but you've got too many Facebook friends, so you're obviously very, very popular. But people can follow you on Facebook, can't they?
Yeah, I've got 2 profiles on there, but the main one that you've tried to add is the one that I normally use a lot. And the reason I created another one was because they've shut mine down a couple of times, and I've had to, you know, I've not had any access. So I thought I'll start another one because they just kept blocking the main one off.
Right.
And that was when I was going up to the Royal Courts of Justice and asking if they were liable for tax, and they told me no. And I said, well, that's funny because you're a corporation. And showed them a couple of things, and they didn't like it. And then they closed my Facebook down within about half hour of me leaving that place.
Really? Wow. Well, we've been getting 1 or 2 dirty tricks from Facebook. I have discovered by people messaging me that when they click on our links from our Facebook page, they've been asked to confirm that they want to leave Facebook and they can't guarantee the security. That's not normally what you get unless you go into a dodgy website. Now, since we got those reports, we have actually invested in a new security certificate for the website, so you can now connect securely to Raconteurs News. That's https://raconteursnews.com. Hopefully that should have cured that problem, but if it hasn't, and you getting connections blocked on Facebook, please do let us know, because we need to know about that sort of thing and how we're being censored. But we're getting to the end of the show now, and I'd like to say big thank you, Lisa. It's been great having you back on again. And any time in the future when you've got something else you've been working on and like to come and have a chat with us, we'd love to have you back again. And thank you, as always, to Jason. Done a great job again tonight. I presume that's a Heathism there.
Yes.
Yeah. And lastly, I'd like to thank all of our listeners, because without you, we'd be just talking to ourselves. We're going to round the show up with a little song now, and we'll be back Thursday evening, 7 o'clock, with David Halpern, when we were talking about Gaza, water used as a weapon, David Kelly, and anything else that comes to mind. So that's going to be a great show. I'm really looking forward to it. I know Jason is, and don't miss that one. Put it in your diary, folks. And at that, I'll bid you all good night.
Yeah, good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa, and good night, everyone.